Whoa, I love this picture of all of us just like right here, ready to rock and roll. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the last mastery class for the NSA NYC chapter. This has been a program that we have been running this year. It's 9 sessions, and Brian was always supposed to be our closing keynote for this. But we shifted it up last minute. Brian is somebody I've known for quite a while. He's an amazing millennial speaker, but he's like totally pivoting every single time there's a need to pivot. That is one of the things that is so excellent with Brian. He listens to what people are needing right now, and then he pivots. And that's one of the things that I think actually you also speak about in your keynotes. I have attended some of Brian's keynotes. Some of them have been about pressing the damn button, which is getting over this sharing phobia that we have when we're doing social media. He has also spoken about how our audiences becomes fans. That's why his nickname, I was about to say, actually, is your website still? No, you turned it into brianfanzo.com, but it used to be isocialfans.com, wasn't it?
Still there. They're both
It's still there
one's
too.
all virtual, one's speaking, both there.
Got it. So there's both things going on here. We're aligning on the. He is also, as you could tell from our pre-conversation, is also a dad of 3 girls, and I follow him just so I can see all the pictures that he's posting about them because they are so cute, and it just actually gives you an insight into the kind of person that Brian is. Apart from that, you have a long speaking career actually for being quite a young guy, I would love to just hear a little bit from you. What was it that got you from being in the Department of Defense? Yes, you heard it right. For 9 years in the Department of Defense, working on cybersecurity, to speaking about speaking right now for us here today. Can you just give us a little bit of that insight into Brian's career and how does somebody do cybersecurity and now virtual speaking gigs? Mania, amazing. Like you all saw the video for the intro here, and it was just like coming out of a coming out of a special little room, and all of a sudden we were all part of his video. Thank you, Brian.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here, and thank you everybody for pivoting. We talk about pivoting the time for this event. I had a client event, a virtual event that the times kept bobbing and weaving, and kind of in the virtual world, just like on the real stage, the speaker before you goes late, then everyone else goes late. And I wish that still wasn't the case in virtual land, but unfortunately that's not the case. And that this is my third one of the day. I had one at 7 a.m. and then that other one. But yeah, for me, like I always like to say, I was kind of probably born to have no niche or no niche. The fact that, in college, I was a computer science major. I was the president of my fraternity my sophomore year, and I played hockey. And nobody played hockey that was a computer science major. Nobody a computer science major was a fraternity. And like one of my, I think things I realize now is my ability to bring those worlds together. And a lot of that had to do with the cybersecurity world. I worked 9 years for the Department of Homeland Security under the DoD here at the Pentagon. And my team, I grew a team that had about 35 direct reports running a $19 million a year budget. And we deployed cybersecurity tools. And then my team, or my role was getting the different branches of military to collaborate and share cybersecurity policies. And I was the young kid trying to do that. And it was really where I got my first nod into speaking was in 2006. It was very, very official. And my boss came down and said, "Hey, Brian, you're the only non-gray haired person on our team. We need you to be the face of cybersecurity in the Department of Defense." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Like, what does that mean?" And he's like, "You need to go to this training. You need to pass it. And then we're going to let you brief the Joint Chiefs of Staff every quarter on recruiting and status and updates." And I went to the class, and they tried to help me slow down, not talk with my hands, not tell stories, not be who I was, which didn't really work, but I ended up passing. And I like to say, like, the scariest talks I've ever given were those early ones. I had General Petraeus in the front row my second year in full military uniform with full no expression. It was also the first time I ever wore a hat on the stage, and I was teaching about change and recruiting millennials. And they were like, Brian, you have to wear a suit and tie, which at the time wasn't too far-fetched. And I was like, well, I'm talking about change. Like, how do I get, and I was like, you know what? And so I stuck my hat in my back pocket, like in my back underneath my suit jacket. And I walked on stage, and as they were introducing me, I put the hat on. And then I look in the front row, and General Petraeus was in the front row. And I just knew him, of course, from TV and being the general. And yeah, for an hour and a half, I talked, and not one facial expression at all, which was to me much harder than 20,000 people at VMworld and those events. But yeah, so I did that. And then when I left the Department of Defense, for me, I left because I actually got promoted. And during the promotion ceremony, it was like, this is the youngest person to ever be a senior VP, GS-15. Your future in cybersecurity, working with the government, is set for life. And I was sick to my stomach in the sense of, I loved working with the military. I loved the work I was doing. But a lot of it was spinning your wheels and going nowhere. A lot of it was, trying to get people to use technology that was 4 or 5 years old. And so I made the change based on the opposite advice of all of my mentors, and went and took what I consider my dream job, which was a technology evangelist at a data center company out of Phoenix, Arizona. And so like I spoke for the government, and then when I worked for the data center company, they kind of made me the face. Like when you walked in the data center, like it was my giant face the size of like three car doors. And I spoke on behalf of the brand at every Gartner event, all the data center innovation events, we were cloud computing. And I was there for 2 years and 10 days. We had 12 new hires a week. We were everything that Silicon Valley, the TV show, talks about with a startup. We had the ping pong tables and the open office floor plans and hiring and firing. It was wild. And 2 years and 10 days later, the company got bought. And on the first day they were bought, they came in and said, what the hell's an evangelist? Today's your last day. Good luck. And I've been an entrepreneur. Actually, 6 years tomorrow is my anniversary of becoming an entrepreneur. So yeah, my birthday yesterday, 6 years tomorrow, entrepreneur. And crazy enough,
this is the perfect event then.
My own. I really was focused on the marketing space, and no one knew me, and no one would give me a side stage of a side stage of a side stage. And so it didn't matter that I did Joint Chiefs of Staff. It didn't matter that I had done VMworld. I had done Mobile World Congress in front of 72,000. It was kind of starting from scratch. So I feel like I've lived 3 different versions of a speaker life, like working for the government, working for a brand sponsor, because I got lots of great stages, not because I was great, because we paid for it. And then I got on my own 6 years ago, and and now it's 95% of my revenue, and I get to speak both versions. And for me, this whole virtual thing has been interesting because I don't have a book yet. I don't have like the name recognition that a lot of people do. And for me, my social media and video has been how I've grown all of my business, like all of my speaking business. We did 67 events last year, and well over 80% of them came from some social media lead, with a mass majority of them actually coming from LinkedIn, through LinkedIn video, LinkedIn content. And so for me, although virtual you would think would be a natural progression as far as comfort, my whole business model was doing all this to build my offline business. So I can tell you it hasn't been near as smooth as everyone would have thought when they were messaging me in March being like, I think you're gonna be in good hands, because I was doing free webinars and free things online for people to hire me full fee offline. So it's been a roller coaster, but it was my 42nd virtual talk this morning. So it's been full steam ahead.
Sounds amazing. And so what I like about this is that you're looking at it from the place of how do I keep addressing and adjusting to how the world is consuming this content. And I think that's exactly where we're at right now, right? Because we are recognizing as speakers that the good old Zoom version with slides and a little tiny photograph up here in the corner, that's for most of us still the new way of speaking. Right? And so it's sort of like that is even a little bit like nerve-wracking and anxiety, like, uh-oh, my slides and the thing and my little picture up there in the corner, and even learning how to, make that a bigger picture and understanding that. And here you are, you're already on to the next that says, well, actually, we need to create that same experience that people are getting, not only knowing, like understanding who we are, like the hat on, and like that personality comes across, even though it's maybe still the tiny picture, but we're actually going to look at today some other options for creating that experience and using your experience from already having done, like from webinars to virtual presentation to actually keynotes.
Yep.
Right? And so I'm gonna sort of like let you roll with it for now and
Sure.
see where you want to take us first, and then we're gonna start asking questions.
Perfect. That sounds good to me. And I like questions. And as far as like people wanting to jump in, or I can see the chat up as well. I've actually done like 3,500, almost 3,600 live streams since March of 2014. So that was like kind of where I cut my teeth on video. An app called Meerkat came out, and then Periscope, which is now popular. And then of course, Facebook Live came out very near after. So, and I hosted a Google Hangout show for 3 years as well. So I love chat and everything going on. And so for me, I think just kind of setting that stage, and I just to put it out there, like so March 4th, I spoke at my last event at Berkshire Hathaway. I flew home, and I've been home ever since. And I lost 18 gigs within that first 2 weeks, including all 4 of my retainer clients that I had for 2.5, 3 years plus. So for me, this was this kick, like many of us kind of got in virtual. And I went through that mourning period, I think that all of us went through, and why us, and what does this look like? But I can tell you out of the gate, one of my biggest drivers, and it's still my driver today, was fee integrity on not cannibalizing what I've been working so hard to build for the last 6 years on my own. So I really wanted to like hit that home. Like, I mean, it was my driving force. I started, doing demos of virtual event platforms. I started, trying out a whole bunch of different things. And so for me, that's kind of what's got me to where we're at now. And so if you guys want to pin my video, I'm going to put some display on video, and it's not as good. We'll go back to the full screen with questions, but if you pin my video, you'll be able to see what I'm about to throw up on the screen. So if everybody can do that, should be able to do that.
Actually, I want you to know 2 things that's from the chat. Ramon wants to know if you're just that smart that you can keep track of everything. And I kind of know that your mind can do 5 things at the same time, which is sometimes an advantage, and I'm sure sometimes is also a challenge. And then Jen is saying that she's invited other people who are entertainment colleagues that are performing in different creative virtual ways. And I think that's exactly what this is about, isn't it? Is that we're taking this to a completely new level of, it's not just a presentation, it's entertainment in some ways as well. So anyway, I just want you to see those, have those in the, yeah.
I will love that. And I will tell you, Ramon, like the 250 Google Plus Hangout interviews that had a simultaneous Twitter chat is where the practice, right? I mean, 200 plus interviews where I was interviewing someone on a Google Hangout, and I had a Twitter chat going at the same time, and I was bringing in questions from the chat. And so for me, that's where like the managing of all of the circles go. But I'll also tell you, part of this also is like kind of figuring it out as you go. This morning I woke up and I'm in like kind of a beta testing group for one of the tools, and 2 people messaged me and said, we're seeing massive lag with Ecamm, which is one of the tools I use, and Zoom. And I've had 3 presentations on there today. And I got on and I had massive lag. I mean, slow-mo 1980s sports level where like I would move my hand and you would see like the track behind my hand. And so that was extremely nerve-wracking, like troubleshooting that. And I can tell you my computer science skills worked out. I ended up looking at some source code on what things were going where and figured out it was a widget, and like Zoom and Ecamm, neither one of them had figured that out yet. So I posted that to them this afternoon. So it helps kind of being a geek as well. I will admit to that side. But yeah, make sure you pin the video. And this is something too in the virtual space. I'll talk about this in a minute, but I've demoed now 72 virtual event platforms, and I'll talk a little bit why and what that meant. But one of the things with these platforms is depending on how you're presenting, you're going to want to make sure to manage expectations to start, right? Like, starting a presentation that has graphics on the screen, and if everyone has the little bubbles, I don't care how great your graphics are, no one's going to actually see that. So hopefully everybody has the video pinned. And I made this presentation just for you guys. So it's kind of a new adoption, but let's see if I can get that. Let's see if we get up.
Yeah, so in pinning the video, what you're doing is not the big picture of Brian, but the little picture of Brian. There's a little 3 dots, just like there is over your own picture. That's the 3 little dots that you click on, and you can go down and say pin video.
Boom. So hopefully everyone sees a giant pink square on the side there. If we all see that, we should all be good to go. But so I created this in Prezi video. If you're familiar with Prezi, like I used it in 2016 twice and was like, man, this is way too confusing to build a presentation. I'm going to go back to PowerPoint and Keynote. They have like the kind of I like to call it the snake style presentation. And then on March 30th of this year, I was Googling the power of Google, innovative presentation, dynamic styles. And I came across Prezi Video, which is a new tool that they rolled out like the end of last year. And so I've done 40 of these where I build them myself within their templates. And this is kind of what I have for you guys today. So I want to set the bar with what we're going to kind of talk about by really thinking about things in like kind of a new light. And I like to say, one of the things I started off by saying was that we have to reinvent, not repurpose what we do offline. I feel, when I mentioned the idea of fee integrity, one of the things that really mattered to me was, what can I take that I do really well offline and present it in a different format online? Because, we've heard this 100 times, right? Like the attention span of the online user is way different than the attention span of somebody that's coming to watch us on stage, no matter how big or small your stage is. And so for me, I look at this opportunity as virtually having no limitations. Like we are limitless in the possibilities of what we can create. And what you guys see here are 3 different styles of presentations. One using Prezi at the top. This one is using picture-in-picture slides. And then the one you see on the bottom is kind of like a broadcast style. I actually did that one talking about 15 things we could learn from the virtual NFL draft. And so for me, when I look at all of these ideas that we have limitless opportunities, one of the things that comes along with limitless opportunities is the feeling of overwhelmed. The feeling of like, oh my God, there's all these things I can do. We end up doing nothing, right? Like, it's just like, it's the byproduct of kind of where we're at. And so I kind of want to kind of put that to a side and say, one of the things that we have to look at is how can we leave the limitations that exist offline there and reinvent the way that we do things. So everything from where we're presenting to who we're presenting to. One of the events that I was very lucky enough to help from a strategy perspective was a Microsoft event recently for their partners. And they had a little over 2,000 partners on a virtual event. Oh my goodness, and there's a giant Black Lives Matter parade directly down the middle of the street outside of my house. How about that? That's pretty cool from a virtual perspective. I can't beat that. So for me, when I was helping
inviting us, but
I was helping the Microsoft group with their project, one of the things that they ended up deciding was they did 821 sessions over 2 days for a 2,000 person event. 821 sessions, which is like, but what they're thinking was that not everyone needs to see every piece of content. And if we have the data and the ability to put people into groups and subgroups and funnel the noise, then how can we leverage that? How can we make that happen? So these are things for us as speakers that we have to think about, right? Including how long do we create a presentation? I will tell you, when I first started working, I'm on an agency with Jay Baer, and Jay and I were talking, and one of the things Jay was like, well, we have to really shrink the length of our presentation. So I took my 60-minute press the damn button talk, and I turned it into 6 10-minute clips. So I say clips as in I could present the whole presentation in 6 little bites, which are 10 minutes apiece. And I can tell you that took a long time, and it was a lot of hard work. I think it was valuable, but funny enough, no one's bought that product. No one's bought like the small version of a talk, but it was kind of like our way of saying, okay, how do we address how long, where, when? And I'm gonna talk a little bit about kind of some of the things that I've learned, but one of the things that I like to think about in this new world is that we have to shift our perspective. And our perspective now has to say, what are the new limitations that are there? What are the new possibilities? What are new experiences that I can create that you can't create anywhere else? I will tell you, for the presentation I did this morning, I did a choose your own adventure. And so when I started off the presentation, I kind of teased out 3 stories, and I let them vote on which of the 3 stories they wanted me to use when I got to that point of the presentation. And of course, they voted in the side. I had all 3 of them kind of stacked up. And then based on what they voted, that turned into that story. And then before I started the story, I gave them a second piece of what they wanted to vote on how they wanted to do Q&A, and if they wanted me to wait to the end, or they wanted to do it in between. And to me, these are all things that, like, if you set your talk up to, can be a heck of a lot of fun. They can change up the dynamics the way you're doing it. And it doesn't have to be fancy graphics and fancy camera. It's really, you know, formulating your content in kind of like that kind of way. And so with like this concept of what I call limitations inspire creativity, it also comes down to this idea of really being able to feel. And one of my keynotes is called Digital Empathy. And it's a big piece for me. Like, you heard a little bit about my background. My big like North Star focus is getting people to realize the beautiful synergy between technology and innovation and humanity. And I don't look at one of the other being better than the other. I actually look at it and say we should be more empathetic by, you know, with synergy with technology. It doesn't mean we have to unplug to be more empathetic, and it doesn't mean we can't be empathetic if we're more connected. And I think as speakers, that's also something we have to think about, right? And some of the basic things to think about in that sense are, you know, how do I change up those dynamics? If I'm using a green screen, I see some people are using the virtual Zoom background, right? Using a DSLR camera versus a web camera. And for those that are curious, I'm actually using the Logitech Brio web camera for this presentation. So I have a DSLR that I use, but I use it for my shorter presentations based on a couple of different things. And so this is using my Logitech Brio. But then, you know, like using something like a second camera is something that we can do. So like I can switch to, now you guys can kind of see my setup here. So this is a second camera using my technology. So I have my web camera that I just told you about, and I have the screen up there, and I have my slides and my presentation format on that side. And I actually have a total of 4 cameras in the room set up to be used, but I don't use all 4 of them with all of the talks. Actually, the talk I gave this morning was a 1-camera talk. The one I gave 2 days ago was one of the ones where I do the presentation and then I sit in a chair for Q&A. And these are all things that you can think of, right? I'm using a standing desk, as you guys can see right now. I have sticky notes on the floor underneath my bare feet to know where I should be standing when the different screens come up. So I simply move my, like this, there's not like magic here. It's literally me moving to a sticky note spot based on where I'm at in the presentation. So like when I look at like kind of some of these options and some of these things that we can think about, I think it also kind of comes down to what I talked about at the beginning. And I like to think of it as like a 360-degree opportunity to be innovative, right? To be innovative in a mobile device perspective, in different types of recording video, using audio, using virtual reality, even making sure your downloads are leveraged in an environment that is virtual compared to the download that we might give when we're on stage. And so I look at kind of like this entire space, and as you can see, there's no green screen or anything. This is all like overlaid on my video. One of the things that I kind of take through this concept, and this is a big one I think for all of us, and it didn't come apparent to me until I started testing out the platforms, is that a lot of people will say, Brian, like, how do I create an interactive, engaged presentation virtually? And the thing I've been answering back is, I ask, is that what you want? Or do you want to be able to maintain the attention of your virtual audience? And I just want you to think about that for a second. Do you want to create a hyper-engaged, interactive, where people are in the chats, there's Q&A, there's polls, you're sending people to a breakout session, or is your goal to maintain the attention of your audience throughout your presentation? And the reason I think this is so important is, depending on which of those goals will depend on presentation style, the platforms that we're using. Like I said, I demoed 72 platforms, and the question I always get is, which one's the best? And none of them are the best. And they each have unique use cases, I found that a majority of platforms for an event you need to use more than one platform together. But it also depends on the speakers, right? Like right now, event professionals as a whole aren't used to including the speaker in the conversation prior to deciding the vehicle of delivering the content, right? Like we're usually brought in after they've decided the venue, the style of stage. And in the virtual space, that can't be the case because we're now our own AV team, we're now our own stage team, or our own performance team, where we control a lot of these variables. And so I think this is a very important thing to think about is what is your goal, right? Like what is the goal? And it might be different for different presentations, different platforms, but I think this is something that I think when you look at something like Netflix, right? Like, I mean, I'm a huge Netflix, I love TV, like it's the best place that I can escape. I was diagnosed ADHD at 31, so I'm medicated for ADHD, and for me, the entrepreneur life, doesn't make it a lot easier, and binging TV is a big escape for me. And when I look at, when you look at a new TV show that's presented to you at Netflix, I've done a lot of analyzing on why I click on certain things, right? Is it the thumbnail? Is it the description? Is it because it says I also watched Game of Thrones, or it's because, I was also watching this documentary, like all of those things. And as virtual presenters, we have to actually factor those kind of things into what we're presenting, how we're presenting, what we're kind of all talking about. And so the next piece is just a real short piece. And then I'll get into the goods, which I think is probably what most people care about, where I'm going to talk gear, software, platforms, and some of the things that I've seen. But one of the other pieces of this that I've hit home with both my speaker manager, Michelle Joyce, and the team that we've been working with back and forth is the two requests that we've got the most, or not requests, but the two comments that we've got the most when it comes to full fee virtual event presenting is that they want it high quality and they want it simple. And the word simple is a really bad word in my opinion here, because I'm like, simple for the users, simple for you, the event planner, simple for the speaker. What do you mean by simple? And they're like, yes, all of that. And so one of the things that we've found is that, yes, I can speak virtually into a lot of predetermined events, but where I've actually found the most value and the place that we're getting hired the most are actually us being the turnkey solution of the event. So someone says, Brian, I want to hire you. That's what happened this morning. Brian, I want to hire you. We do a weekly all hands team call every Wednesday at 10 a.m. We want you to come in for that. Can you send us a link of what I should send my entire team? And so now I control the platform, the technology, the back end. But what I've found in that sense is that they value that at a level. And there's also kind of like that interesting mix between that. And so definitely something to think about. There's also things to think about on live versus pre-recorded versus produced video. And I'll talk about that in a second. But one of the things that I kind of think as a speaker that we have to think about in this kind of virtual space is what I call my 4 E's. That these are my 4 E's. And so the first one is emotion. Like, what is the emotion that you want to convey? And I think depending on your topic and depending on your audience, right? Like, I love that I can see all of your eyeballs right now. Like, oh, it's so much more refreshing. Like the talk I gave this morning, right? It was just me into Zoom and no one on video, right? Like the fact I'm getting, some nonverbal cues, I'm getting some eye contact, that to me is one step closer to what we miss on stage. But for a lot of times that's not the case. And so, even how you stand, where you walk in, how you present yourself, these are all things on video that are very important. Like even the mannerisms with how you're using your hands are actually amplified in this space. And so one of the things I think we struggle with sometimes is that we will say, okay, Brian, I have to use slides and I have to be stuck to my desk. How do I present an engaged value? And my first comment back is, who said you're stuck, right? Like let's put us as speakers have to kind of, we've always been good. And this is something I struggled with early on is I never wanted to be a diva. So they would be like, Brian, do you want a lavalier mic, over the ear or handheld? I'd be like, whatever works for you. And as you guys can see already, I talk fast and I talk with my hands. So if you put a handheld microphone in my hand, it is not a beautiful situation. And so it took me about 2 years to realize I need to be able to be direct and control some of the things that I know that I need to control to deliver the best value I can deliver. And I think that's the same thing in the virtual space. So that's one of the places to think about. The other piece of it is figuring out how to get yourself closest to the environment that we are used to, right? And so this includes, the idea of what you're familiar with, the content formula, the stage, the audience. And one of the things for me is I have to stand. Like me giving a presentation, I'm passionate and fired up like this no matter what. Like I wake up this way. You can ask my poor kids. But me sitting does not convey the same emotion, but it also doesn't get me the same fire in my belly that I like with his virtual presentations. But I will also caveat that, I'm loving virtual. I think virtual is amazing. I miss the stage like crazy. And I look at this as a second income stream, not as a replacement. I get that question all the time right now. It's like, Brian, are you setting yourself up to, when the stages come back, to not use those? And it's like, no, I don't know when they're going to come back. My business model was to predict that it would be June of 2021 before I ever get on stage again. And so I decided I changed all of everything I spend now is with the idea that I won't get a paid gig on stage until 2021 June. Now I have 8 gigs this fall that are still on for offline, but that's just something to kind of think about. And so it's important to set up your environment. Yes, it's cool to have a great background. Yes, it's cool, standing desk, but set up your environment that sets you up for success, right? Like I have a mat underneath my feet, a padded mat, because I do like to be on my feet. I just recently bought a stool that I'll probably lean on here when we're doing Q&A because I do like being on my feet, but an hour and a half on your feet can get a little bit overwhelming, right? So these are some of the things that you have to think about. The third one, which is the book that I just finished writing and hopefully will be out this winter, which is called Press the Damn Button. And what I kind of said to that is, I don't know much more than all of us, right? Like we're all figuring out virtual together and we're figuring out what works. Like I will study a webinar, I'll study a documentary, I'll watch a TED Talk, I'll watch a Netflix, I'll watch a sporting event. One of the things I've been watching a lot lately has been esports and Twitch, because Twitch can get people to watch, like the average watch time for a Twitch, which is like a video game community, is 53 minutes is the average watch time for someone that is subscribed to a channel. 53. For perspective, YouTube is 3 minutes. 53 on Twitch, right? So like, what are they doing? And one of the things I noticed was really interesting is they all have big gamer chairs that are very, very large. And the way that they use the chair to go from gaming to engage the audience is very, maybe let's just say not obvious, but if you're studying it, you will notice when they're talking over and playing the game, they will face a certain way. When they open up to the audience, it conveys a completely different, atmosphere, and the chat will go crazy and all these people will do all these things. And so like studying those kind of things, and for me, a lot of that comes down to figuring out how to execute. And I'm trying it out as I go. And then one of the other big pieces before I get into kind of like the gear and software side is trying to figure out how to be empathetic in this platform, right? So listening and talking with your audience. I think as speakers, we've known that, but in the virtual space, I think if you want to alienate your audience really quick, tell them what to do, not say the problems that we have, right? And usually simply using the words like we and us rather than saying you. Like, and I've been doing that throughout this presentation, right? Like these are the problems we have in the virtual space rather than these are the things you are struggling with. You will notice, and I've gone to a lot of virtual events as an attendee just to study what's going on. I will notice a lot of people check out of the chat. They check out of the event itself when they feel as though someone is berating them, someone is talking down to them. And I think it can work in the stage environment because a lot of people don't have a choice, right? You're in that room, they're not gonna stand up and go anywhere, they already signed up for the event. But virtually, when we feel uncomfortable, when we feel not worthy, and we feel like we're not a part of the group that is in there, our tendency to be like, all right, we're out of here is very high, right? So definitely something to think about as we look, kind of at the virtual space. So now we'll get into the goods and the tips and tricks, and then I'm happy to bring in some questions. And I'll share the gear. I do have the gear in here as well. But like part of it too is kind of figuring out how your brand fits in your graphics and your pieces. I will tell you, I actually offer for different events, I will go to the sponsors of the event and say, hey, do you want to sponsor my presentation? I'll use your brand colors and use your logo within my on-screen graphics if you're willing to sponsor me to be part of this event. Little things like that is getting creative that weren't really, an option, or I guess they were an option. We weren't using them on the stage environment. And, part of it too is kind of figuring out how to kind of make those type of things work. And so we're going to talk a little bit about gear, and we're going to talk a little bit about devices and how this works. So this is what I call the upgrade from Zoom, from average Zoom to standing out, being really good. And it's just 3 pieces of equipment. It's the ring light, it's the Logitech camera, and it's the Blue Yeti microphone. And just to be completely transparent, is exactly what I'm using right now. So what you guys see on this screen is the gear that I'm using right now. Now I will tell you, anyone that's searched for a web camera since COVID, it's like, those things are, they're harder to find than toilet paper, which, is something to be said in these current day and age. But, the Logitech Brio is the one I'm using. The one that you saw with the camera behind me, that's the Logitech D920, which is the previous version of it. I still love that camera. There's definitely a difference with lighting, depth, focus with the Logitech Brio. But I'm not a huge believer in having to go over the top with gear. I believe high production value can also equal a high production, high fees. But I feel like if you're using too much and doing too many things, it can also be, harder to keep simple and harder to troubleshoot, right? I have a podcasting microphone, I have a DSLR, I have a full camera setup that I have, but I can tell you if one thing goes wrong on that, it's like an hour and a half of troubleshooting. Where this, I have my AirPods behind my microphone. If the microphone stops working, I unplug, switch to the AirPods, and go. And so that gear is up there. If you guys are interested, right here, that's my Amazon influencer storefront. I get like 20 cents for every $100 or something. But I actually put on that storefront, I have 4 different kits. I have like virtual keynote kit, I have premium home office kit, I have upgrade Zoom kit, and then I believe I have podcast live streaming kit. So you guys can check those out if you want up there on the Amazon store.
Can I just ask you a question for that one before you go on?
Sure.
So, yeah, there's also somebody's asking about the camera switcher. That would be one of my questions too, to show us that. But so just a couple of questions in terms of the microphone.
Yep.
Because there's also a microphone in the web camera, right?
There is.
So how come you're not using that?
So for me, if you'll notice, I have no earbuds in. I have no. So the idea is, if you have this microphone, so I'm using the Blue Yeti, which you guys can see here. The nice thing about that is any speaker noise that's behind it, it does not pick up. Now the web camera the speakers are between the web camera and me. And so if I was using the web camera microphone, it actually picks up. That's where you get the echo. That's where you get that like annoying piece of it. And so the external microphone actually breaks up that distance. And I can tell you, I worked with the Super Bowl. I used this microphone. The Stanford band came on the other side of this microphone, and people are like, "What's that noise in the background?" Like it's pretty good from like that depth. But yeah, that's the reason the external microphone is almost required. Or I would definitely have to have headphones in to listen to people ask questions.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Yeah, and I'll show the.
There was a question about camera switcher, but I think you're going to come to that later anyway, right?
Yep, I will, and that's a big one too, because it's another one where I have 5 things of gear right here, and the thing I'm using is not even plugged in, or the most of the expensive thing is the thing I'm not even using. So this
is there a specific brand of the ring light? Somebody's asking.
What's up?
Is there a specific brand on the ring light?
NEWEER. I will say I don't really care. Like most of the ring lights are fairly good. I would say the biggest thing that you want to focus on is the ability to adjust the temperature of it, how bright, because as the sunlight changes, you want to be able to change. My first ring light, which I got 6 years ago, which is still over there, not plugged in, it had no adjustment. And I mean, it was massive difference. And I will say the more expensive the ring light, the less heat it gives off. So if you're one that sweats a lot, you might want to spend a little bit more money, because it does give off a little bit of less heat. But they range from like $99 to I think $350 or $400. And really the biggest differences are the amount of heat it gives off, and the amount of adjustment you can get. I think the one I have is $129. It's by Newer, NEWEER.
Yeah, I put it in the chat as well, because that's the light I'm using as well. I also have little squares that I use for just being in front of my camera for the wall if I need to.
Oh, yes.
Like even these little guys here. So there's a lot that they are actually doing. They're kind of like, they're really like set with all kinds of lights. So thank you for that.
Yep, for sure. So this has been one of my biggest soapboxes probably since March 10th come around, is that I look at virtual events requiring to have 3 types of video content. And most people assume, because I've done 3,500 live videos, live streaming is kind of like the business, marketing business that I ran, launched it for IBM, Dell, Samsung, SAP, Applebee's, UFC. I launched all of their very first Facebook Live, the very first Instagram Live. Funny enough, like I love live for what live can present, but if you're not using the aspects of live, going live is a waste. It adds way too much stress, way too many things that can go wrong. It also prevents us from being a great speaker. And so here's the tool. So you'll see the software across the bottom. So this is live streaming, right? So everything from going live like we're doing now into Zoom to the typical social media. My favorite tools are the ones you see here. Restream.io is a newer player to the game. What I really like about them is that they allow you to stream to all platforms at once, but they allow you to customize the thumbnail, the title, the description on every platform before you go live, which is beautiful. It also allows you to customize what you're gonna do with the video afterwards. So if you want your replay to live on LinkedIn Live, but not on YouTube, you can customize that all within the Restream Studio. The other thing that's really nice about their tool is you can actually do interviews within their platform as well. You know, transparently, my new podcast launches on Friday called Press the Damn Button. And they're my title sponsor, Restream is. But they were my title sponsor because I reached out to them and said, I want to use you guys exclusively for all of my live podcasting. Can I use you? The second tool you see there, which is Ecamm, that's what I'm using right now to switch the cameras and to present to you guys. So I'm not using Restream for this. I'm using Ecamm with Prezi Video. So these two right here are what I'm using. I have Prezi Video, which is the overlays that you see. And then Ecamm is the one that allows me to switch between the different cameras, right? So I can go, you know, there you go. So that's the behind this camera. This is the camera with Prezi. And then of course, this is the camera without any of that Prezi directly to the format. So Ecamm, what Ecamm allows you to do, I love it. So there's a tool called Wirecast and a tool called OBS. Some of you might be familiar with. They're massive encoders that you install on your machine. They hog all of your resources. They are amazingly powerful. They're what broadcasters use. The problem with them is they hog all of your resources. They give you almost too many options. And if you were managing a stream by yourself, I feel it's too much. And you know, I did the Super Bowl, when I live streamed at the Super Bowl for 24 hours, we used Wirecast and it was great, but a tool like Ecamm didn't exist. And so what Ecamm is compared to, some people might be familiar with StreamYard or BeLive. StreamYard and BeLive are browser-based tools that you log into the browser, you can bring in a guest and you can live stream. What Ecamm is it's kind of like a hybrid between the two. It's a hybrid between a encoder and a browser-based sharing. And what's really nice is I can set up scenes, I can set up switching the cameras, I can set up different, you know, if I switch to a camera, I can have different overlays, I can bring in multiple different feeds. If I want to play a video, if anybody's tried to play a video through Zoom and get the sound to actually sound half decent, it's like a work of art. Ecamm makes all of that really, really simple. I'm not paid by them to promote them. I'm a giant fan that it's a hybrid between the two worlds. I will say they have their pricing model is like $19 to $49 a month. They're not dummies in the part that the thing that you need to use in Zoom, which is called the virtual cam, is only available on the premium price. So I just put that out there because I've sent a lot of people to Ecamm and like, wait a second, Brian, $20, I don't get the, so if you want to be able to plug it into platforms. Now, the other thing about Ecamm that I love is I tested 72 virtual event platforms. As long as the virtual event platform allows video from your desktop, you can use Ecamm. Doesn't matter what platform. So everything from WebEx to GoToWebinar to Demio to Big Marker to Workcast. I mean, I literally have tested them on a giant number of them. So what is really nice about that is if you build out your deck in Ecamm, it doesn't matter what platform someone throws at you. And if you saw like the picture-in-picture slides that I had up before, I do that on Ecamm. So if I'm sharing a PowerPoint deck or a Keynote style deck, I use it on Ecamm as a picture-in-picture. If I'm building something new, which is what I did for you guys today, I use Prezi Video. And so Prezi Video gives it like this cool like transition feel that you guys see. So like when I move in between, like that's all using Prezi. Now I will say you can do that in Ecamm. It just takes a little bit more work. And I want to set the record straight. The presentation that you see on this screen right here, sorry, Prezi didn't used to mirror their video until a week and a half ago. And so I did 30-some presentations practicing how to point the wrong direction. And now all of a sudden they allow you to mirror the video, and now I can't point the right direction. Like, oh. So if you see me pointing the wrong direction, I'm still figuring that out because I had to retrain myself, and now I have to untrain what I just trained. But this video that you see, I did a shoe cam, which I was playing around with. But what I wanted to show is I did a presentation of the 15 things I learned from the virtual NFL draft. And I had 2 screenshots per item, and I decided to build out 40 scenes. So technically it was 40 slides inside of Ecamm. It took me almost 5 hours to build that presentation into Ecamm. On average, now that I have pretty familiar with Prezi Video, I'm under 90 minutes for taking one of their templates and turning it into a pretty good, well-oiled machine for presenting. So yes, you can do everything in Ecamm. It can be, I mean, every broadcasting tool you can imagine, right? So you can bring in lower thirds, you can transition slides, you can do all of that inside of Ecamm. But I will kind of warn you, for me, I've defaulted towards Prezi for the presentation style because I can get it done a lot faster, and it does a lot of the things like this for me. So that was live. And I really didn't let me hit live real quick just on the soapbox. Only use live if your presentation has a reason for being live. And what I mean by that is, are you going to customize what you talk about based on questions, based on the chat? You know, like I told you, one of my talks that I'm doing now is I allow the audience to decide what story I pick. That has to be live, right? I can't do that pre-recorded. But if you're not going to do it, if those things aren't part of your talk, I recommend don't go live. Pre-record the talk and then have a live component with a Q&A at the end if that's the style you're going to present. The reason being is if you're live, you get one take. And that means your bandwidth has to be good. I can tell you for this presentation, because you guys were so niceful to move this time for me, we're getting a storm here in Northern Virginia at 4:30. The power went out 10 days ago in the middle of a presentation that I was giving. And these are things you don't think about, right? Like even if the power doesn't go out, like lightning and thunder or a parade going by, these are all things you have to kind of factor in with live. And so I'm a big proponent of pre-recorded. Now, the reason I'm stressing the words pre-recorded and not like a produced video is because the place that we are currently going wrong, at least I feel, is that when we're talking to event planners, organizers, or other people outside, and we're telling them, do you want it to be live or recorded? Their thought process is live is customized for me, and they're doing it just like they would on stage. Pre-recorded is, well, they're giving me a YouTube video that they created for everyone, and they're just gonna chalk it up there. And that's a big mistake for multiple reasons, because the reason I love pre-recorded is I can pause, I can do retakes, I can adjust the lighting and the audio afterwards, I can cut out different things, like in the pre-recording one that I did 2 days ago, I said the name of the brand wrong 3 times in hour-long presentation, very embarrassing. I was able to dub that audio, replace the audio with the right naming, and in post-production, and I didn't have to re-record, I didn't have to be embarrassed, nobody except for you guys know that, you know, in my space. And so I love pre-recorded, and pre-recorded doesn't mean it has to be fancy. Now I'm an ambassador and an influencer for Adobe. I have Final Cut Pro on my machine. I love fancy gear, but I don't use either one of those. I use Camtasia by TechSmith, which is a training solution. If you guys are familiar with TechSmith, they own Snagit and a couple other tools. I love their video editing because it gives you enough to be creative and production, but not too much to where you get overwhelmed with like fading of colors and transitions and all of the different scenes. And so I'm a big fan of Camtasia for my editing pre-recorded video. Funny enough, I do a lot of my video. The video that you guys saw as my promo for this session was actually edited on my phone on a tool called InShot. So if you see InShot up here, right here. So InShot, I believe it's $4.99, $5.99. It is an amazing tool. I found myself recording a video on my DSLR, sending it to my phone to edit it rather than sending it to my computer. As crazy as that is, because it does it in 1080p, it gives me all of the overlays and transitions, but it does it in a format that's very user-friendly, drag and drop. I don't feel like I have to be a massive producer. And then the third tool you guys see up there is the Adobe Spark. If you're looking for quick hit videos, Adobe Spark has a great tool where it allows you to add different clips, but it doesn't give you too much to kind of overwhelm you. I do that with a lot of my like social video that I'm putting out there. For those that saw my pre-recorded video, so I recorded that with this camera right here. So this is the Gopro Max 360. So if you guys saw that, it kind of went out my window, and that's the picture you see on the laptop. So this is the GoPro 360. I can tell you I've owned 3 360 cameras and hated all 3 of them. I thought they were a mess to edit. I'm not a professional videographer or editor. I got this tool from Adobe as a Christmas gift, and I immediately thought, who was I gonna re-gift it to? Because that's how much I don't like 360. But I decided to give it a try, just doing videos of my daughters. And I fell in love with the idea that editing on your phone is really simple. I think the camera itself is $350, but all of the editing is done on your phone. And so I recorded that video without changing anything, right? So I was holding the camera, talking to it like we normally would. And I knew when I wanted to like throw it outside. And so if you saw my hands move, that was all done in post-production, right? There was no fancy, I didn't move the camera. There's no drone outside my window, but I was saying it kind of pre-show. I love Prezi. I love using multiple cameras. I would argue having a creative virtual preview, a virtual video that previews what you're going to talk about has probably earned me more virtual keynotes than all this other stuff. Because they're like, oh my goodness, he's thinking differently about his promo. He's probably willing to think different on everything else he's doing. And so you don't have to do it like a 360 camera. It can be, if you guys saw the NFL's Black Lives Matters videos, I thought they were amazingly done. And they were using vertical video from the players. The players were all talking into their phone. And one of the things I thought of is, well, they organized this. They could have easily turned the camera, horizontal and done it. But when I reached out to the head of content for the NFL, and she said, our goal was real and authentic. Real and authentic comes across a lot better when you're holding the phone as if it's like, an Instagram story or a FaceTime than the other way. And so those are things to think about, even in your presentations and the videos that you're sharing to your clients. Although we want to be professional and quality matters, there's also an element of what are you trying to convey? And so I love pre-recorded. And the third video, so remember I said live for live's sake. Pre-recorded is not a canned video. It is a video that you create ahead of time that you edit just for your clients. And then the third one is produced video. And I think having production elements within your content can really set you apart. So I got an animator for 2 of my presentations where I use I sent a script to an illustrator and she illustrated part of my talk. And so when I switch from like this, when I'm like in your face, yelling at everybody, doing what I do, into the Q&A, I'm like, okay, guys, this is what I meant. This is what I hope you got out of it. And it's a 30-second illustration. And then when it comes back to me, I'm sitting on the other side here with my other camera at a much more conversational, intimate type arena. But using that simple kind of transition kind of shows that like next level piece. Because remember, my whole goal since day one has been, how do I keep my fee integrity close to the same as my offline events? Because I didn't want to have to cannibalize what I'm doing. And then if you look down here, these are just a bunch of brands you've all heard of. I really like looking and studying what other people are doing in the digital space to capture attention, right? So like when Disney Plus came out with their announcement, what was the words they used? What were the camera angles they used? What was the style they used, right? How do I incorporate that into your presentation? And I will tell you, I've never been one that's really good at outsourcing. I always figure if I can Google it, I can do it, which is not a good mantra. And I know if Ramon Ray's in here, I've heard him preach the opposite many, many times, which I'm getting better at. I have an agent, I have a team now. But for me, one of the commitments I made to myself was I'm going to have a produced element in every single talk, and I'm going to have someone else actually do it. All right, so last couple pieces, and I'm happy to open up Q&A. One of the things that I've also learned is, we get really good at the cadence of virtual presentations and delivering them. And just like the offline one, you want to be on time. You want to be able to keep the momentum. Your timing in virtual can really be thrown off by simply having to troubleshoot something, audio not working, maybe you click the slide. And so having a false ending to me is everything. Now, I had a false ending in my offline presentations. I always have. And the way I do that is usually 4 to 5 slides before the end. I do about 30 slides on average for my 60-minute talks. 4 to 5 slides before the end. I usually have a logo or a design element that I created that I know I can end on, that the audience will think is the last screen, but it's not. And virtually, you need to have the same, because there is a time where you're going to get to a point where you're like, I'm never going to get through the deck. And no one likes being, having to click through to the end of the deck. And so I build into every talk that ending slide that might not be my ending. And when I get off, people are like, man, you ended right on time. I'm like, I know, I'm good, right? Like, oh, how good I am. And then like, I had 5 more slides and 22 minutes worth of content left, right? Like, not only was I not on time, but I was way behind time. And I think virtually it's something, it gives us more freedom to kind of go with the flow as well, right? If someone asks something, you're like, oh my goodness, I want to go there, knowing I have that false ending that I can jump to. And the cool thing about Prezi is, you'll notice with each one of my things, it comes back to the center. And so really, Prezi builds in a false ending for me after every touch point, right? Because it comes back to that same center graphic, and I can just end there if I needed to end. The other one there, being confidently authentic, owning the mistakes. I think the biggest limitation for many of us will be the idea that we want to be perfect. And I believe perfection is a fairy tale. It's the chapter 1 of my book. And I believe it's a fairy tale for all kinds of reasons. But in this space, we're all learning together. We're all figuring it out. If you're not willing to admit when something goes wrong or like ask for forgiveness, it's going to stress you out. You're going to hate this format. You're going to absolutely hate it. Our good friend Sylvie and I were on a call recently, and Sylvie's like, Brian, I'm going through my head, perfection's a fairy tale, perfection's a fairy tale. And I was like, I know, because it's one of those things too, where we see video and we all of a sudden want to portray something maybe that's even more than what we do on stage. And my advice on that is, don't compare yourself to what you watch on TV or a professional broadcaster or even a YouTuber that makes their living. Compare yourself apples to apples. Someone that's doing virtual for the first time since March, right? Like, let's manage our own expectations when it comes to our ability to deliver virtually. Even to the comment before, I mean, I've done 300 Google Hangouts, 3,500 plus live streams. Live is where I've been playing for forever. And that's where I get the comfort for some of this, but like, I can understand the overwhelming piece of that. And then the third one is probably the most important, and it happened to me this morning, was when I woke up and they had that problem with the Zoom and the lag. I mean, being able to roll with the punches. Like I immediately was like, what's my backup plan? And I was like, well, I have some graphics. I have 5 graphics that I can use that I'll put on the screen one by one, and that'll be my backup if I can't get Prezi to work. And so definitely something, kind of important to see, be confidently authentic, right? Which just means don't apologize in the sense of like, hey, like you want them to feel bad or feel awkward. Be like, hey guys, I'm really trying to push the envelope here and try new things. And you know what? Like I always say, like, I build it into my talks, right? Perfection's a fairy tale. And the only guarantee you can get with live video is something will go wrong. Well, as soon as I say that and something goes wrong, I'm like, see, I told you guys I'm right. Like something went wrong, right? And if you can own that, that's important. All right, the last things I have is test, tweak, and repeat. You won't know what works or what's too much or what's not enough until you test it. And after you test it, ask for feedback. One of my things that I've been doing, every time someone tweets me or says, Brian, I love the way you use Prezi. Your presentation was so engaging, so amazing. I reply back with, what is one thing I could have done different? Or what is one thing you didn't like? Because it's very easy for us to rest on those in this virtual space, especially when you're using something fancy. It's like a shiny object syndrome. But to grow, we really do have to ask for that feedback that is a little bit more than what we're normally asked. Create swim lanes, not rules. And I think this goes two formats, both with ourselves, but also with our event producers. Like a lot of times they'll say, Brian, you have to do this, this, and this. And I'll say, okay, why do I have to do those? And what is the freedom I have to do this kind of thing, right? Create swim lanes that allow you to bob and weave. And with an event organizer, it's the same way. I will tell them, hey, I will happily use your platform if I can do this, this, and this. If not, I can have a platform available that I can use that hopefully would make it work for you guys. Looking for inspiration outside of your industry. I've been doing a lot on TikTok, not me singing or lip singing. I'm not great at that. I have done a couple videos, but nothing that anyone should ever go look at. But I've been looking at TikTok on transitions and camera angles and ways that different thought leaders, I mean, right now, the most popular people that I follow on TikTok are doctors, lawyers, nurse, police officers, military, and stay-at-home moms. And watching them engage and create content can teach us a lot on how we can kind of not only engage with that audience, but for many of us, we don't think of ourselves as a video creator, and neither do those on TikTok. And so you'd be amazed when you see things working on TikTok, how you can integrate that into what you're doing. And then document, create, and iterate. I create a lot of content, but a lot of times what my focus is each week is one great piece of content. And then I document how I did it and then the results. Therefore, I get a lot of content out of it, but it's really one great piece of content rather than trying to create a bunch of good stuff everywhere. If you follow me, you might assume that I try to create a bunch of good stuff everywhere, but I can promise it's one core piece. Like my podcast interview on Friday with my good friend Aaron Gargan King, that's my bulk piece of content. But I've done preview video, I've done a, hey guys, let me get your questions and answers beforehand. So these are all things that you can think about. And then last one is probably my most important advice is I call it screenshot awesomeness. Virtual is hard, it's confusing, it's overwhelming, and it can get really down to earth. It can beat you up. Sometimes you feel like you're doing all of this work for very little money or very little, get back. You have to screenshot every time you get a good comment, something good happens, and put it into a folder. I have a portfolio of awesomeness on my desktop. I actually started that in 2009 with my team because they were like, how do we prove the value of our team? I was like, we just take a screenshot every time something good happens. And they were like, well, this was a good meeting. I was like, well, take a selfie of the meeting, and now we're going to put that in that folder. And I can tell you, this whole thing is frustrating. Things go good, things go bad. But if you have that folder of all the good comments, it reminds you of what you're doing is worthwhile and what you're doing has value. I mean, I screenshot awesomeness on an everyday basis. So I won't talk this because I'll go back to the main screen, but I have a whole document that'll go out Friday on the 72 platforms that I reviewed. It was actually supposed to go out 2 weeks ago, but it got a little overwhelming. But I have a list of like 80 questions that I asked every virtual event platform. And I'm creating a new list that is every question speakers should ask every virtual event platform on what capabilities there are for us to do what we're doing. So I'll make sure that everyone gets kind of a copy of that that's on this so we don't have to jump into that. So with that, that's all I got. Hopefully, I know it's a lot. I talk fast and I'm, it can be overwhelming, but I'm happy to answer every and all questions and anything that you guys feel that could be of value. For me, like I said, I'm trying to figure this out as well, but I'm having some fun with it.
It's so great. There's so much context and content in this. And what I would love to do is getting another little back view into your setup from the other angle. And also just understanding this, the other camera that you're using when you're saying, I'm gonna speak straight to camera, for example. Then you're moving over to another camera and stuff like that. You have a switcher box. Why do you have that and not just using the one angle in that sense? What happens there?
So part of it is lighting. Part of it is honestly, part of it is trying to change the kind of attitude or mentality that exists. And actually here, what's this? Let's do a little, there you go. How about that? Now you got me picturing. We can go both ways. So yeah, this is using eCam. So I can even move my circle. I can, if I want to make it, you guys want to see square me, we can do all kinds of fun things with that. So, so part of the setup for me is changing the dynamic of how I'm presenting, right? So like, when I move to a chair, I want the chair to feel different. So like I have a black background behind me. It's not like the white background here. I almost want to change that entire atmosphere. Also the focus on the camera. So I have my DSLR, the Sony that I have. I love that wide angle, bokeh effect. But in this room where I'm at right now, it doesn't really matter if my wall is all white, which I use for the Prezi. that camera doesn't really add any value. It just actually puts more resource constraint on my machine. So yeah, you can see the way I do it is I have on this monitor, I have the zoom, and here you see my Prezi video slide, and then I have eCam. So technically I'm looking at myself 3 times, which looking at myself once is overwhelming. 3 times is, no one should have to go through that. But so this is the magic behind it. So let me switch to, so I'm actually clicking the arrow on my Prezi every time you see me switch the Prezis. So if you guys see me switch the different overlays there,
yeah.
Let me see if I can. And let's go. Look at that. All right. So when you see me doing this, like here, this is how fancy it is I'm going just the next arrow. That's what's all of that every time. Now I will tell you, I have this tool right here, which is called the Stream Deck, which you can see has different buttons for me to toggle between different things. The only reason this was not used, because I can move slides, move which camera I'm using. It's about $129. The reason I'm not using this at the moment is because my daughter spilled apple juice on my USB hub yesterday. And so I don't have my USB hub at the moment. That is literally the only reason I'm not using that. So traditionally, you guys would see me using like these left and right button to move the slides, and then camera 1, camera 2 would be down here. The other thing to think about is there's lots of gear, like switching cameras. You can have a hardware gear or you can have software. Hardware gear means all of the cameras plug into the hardware and you have to manually switch the camera via a piece of hardware. What's nice about that is it doesn't put all the resources on your machine. What's bad about that is you're now controlling that via a separate device. For me, based on just the way that I work, is I like to have software changing. So you'll notice there's nothing that plugs into this. This is directly USB into my laptop. So all of my devices are plugged into my laptop. So when I have 3 cameras, there are 3 cameras plugged into my actual physical laptop, and I'm controlling them via software. Some people control them with Vin, who I was speaking with, who spoke at the event I did this morning. He uses a Blackmagic with 4 HDMIs in that he controls it all via a piece of hardware. So you can do either one. You can do hardware or software. You just have to know those kind of like, how you want to switch between the two. And then this is my standing desk. It's on control. So I don't know if you guys, so yeah, that's my standing desk. The cool thing is the controls are right here. And what's really nice about that is I have 4 different settings. So I have one for standing and presenting, one for standing and working, one for podcasting, and then one for working all the way down. The desk itself is like $450, which is really nice. And it programs automatic up and down. So like just another little thing to like kind of make things a little bit easier. But I have for many years used like a box and put my things up in the air so I could have eyesight. And that's another thing to think about too. I know when I was talking to Colette and like Neen James just the other day, where your camera positions also conveys the emotion that you want to give off, right? So if your camera is up at a higher angle, that's a different connection than if you're eye level, or if you're like the zoom level where everyone's looking down. So those are things you want to factor in. I like having the external camera. The other nice thing about the Brio is it plugs in USB, right? So even when I'm traveling or when I want to do a video, like tonight I have a Zoom call where I'm mentoring a couple of speakers. I'm going to be doing that downstairs from my couch, and I'm going to take my laptop, my Logitech, and my USB microphone, and just do it from down there. So part of it is kind of figuring out what you're comfortable with and what you're looking for.
Okay, and so there's a couple of questions in the chat. One is, when you're using your DSLR, do you handle sound differently and the mic differently, or are you plugging in? Are you still plugging in the same
way? So I don't like using any external audio that's attached to a recording device. I do have a boom microphone that I sometimes use if I'm going to move around the room, where I'm not, because like this one I'm straight on. You guys can hear me no matter where I'm at, as long as I'm straight on. But I do have a boom one that actually gives me a little bit more radius. But I don't care which camera I'm using. I'm trying to use the external one that's not connected to a camera.
Got it. And the other one too here is, what do you do when you go on the road, or are you just using the studio? But you kind of already mentioned that, because you said, when I do it from my couch, this is what I use.
I travel with a the Logitech and this microphone. I travel with both of them. I also have a tabletop tripod. And funny enough, I got, actually here I can show you. Let's see, hold on, let me see if it's there. Hold on a second.
Even though nobody's traveling right now, but it will come again.
Where it's at? So I have actually a ring light that plugs in USB, and it sits on a tripod. Actually, hold on, I'll show you this. So I know you might have been thinking it was like the normal one that goes on top of your phone.
I see, yeah.
But like, so this is one. It's like, I think it's like $25 from Iographer is the name of the brand, Iographer. But it plugs in USB and it has adjustable lights, like dimmer up and down. So like, if you think about it, when we're traveling, you bring your web camera and an external microphone, and you know, like, and this, and you pretty much have a very similar setup to what I have. You know, I do a lot on the road, you know, when we were traveling, and I've never traveled with light. I've taken hotel lights and taken the top off and, you know, put them at angles. I think if you guys follow me on Instagram, you'll see some very creative presentations in hotel rooms. But yeah, that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah. Speaking of light, and like, do you use the natural light from the windows and then adjust with the other lights that you're setting up? How do you make it so that you have straight on from the sides? What are some of the small tips and tools around how to set up good lighting?
So lighting and audio, I am not an expert. I am one that leans on experts for lighting and audio. Those were where I struggle the most. So I like the 3-point system, right? So I have box lights on both sides here, and then the ring light straight ahead. Now I do have the windows that are right there, right there. That was causing all kinds of issues when my desk was about 2.5 feet closer to that window, because halfway through the presentation, when the sun disappears, all of a sudden the lighting on me disappeared. So I did move my desk in a little bit away from the windows. For me, I think the big piece is if I'm using the box light, it doesn't matter how the light changes outside. You really won't see any difference. But I'm a huge fan of natural light, but I think it's worse to show the light changing during a presentation. It's very distracting. So if you think the sun's going to change, or the lighting's going to change, or the timing's going to change, it's probably best to fire up the 3-point system. I will tell you the box lights that I have are $100 for both, and that ring light. So I don't have I do have a different setup at my girlfriend's in Atlanta. She's a broadcaster for the Weather Channel. So we have a really fancy, like, at-home setup there, where we have LED panels for the side ones, which the nice thing about those is you can set them up to adjust automatically, which is beautiful. But that's a little overkill for what I have right here. So yeah, 3-point light system, one ring light directly overhead, and two boxes, one box on each side.
Yeah, and Newer has all kinds of lights. Is that normally
Yep. Yeah.
the ones you're using? Yeah.
I think, yeah, actually, I think all 5 lights here are Newer. Yep.
Yeah. They do a pretty good job having an array of that. And then also the standing desk.
I bought these box lights in 2015, just so they last a good while for that price. I mean, like, that's,
yeah, they do.
3 moves and you know, kids and me knocking them down. So that's a pretty decent investment.
Yeah, my Newer lights also came with different color screens, so that I can actually change the color based on whether there's more sunlight or if there's more in the evening and stuff like that. And somebody was asking what kind of standing desk it is, but I don't know if you remember.
Autonomous AI. So if you look at Autonomous AI, the AI is their .com, right? So autonomous.ai, I believe, on the web. If you look at my gear, on my Amazon equipment gear, thank you, Robert.
It's on there too.
It's on there. I have it linked to there. They are amazing. I bought this in 2014. The motor, I kickstarted their company actually, and then the motor had gone bad. They sent me an entire new desk and an entire new motor from that part, and I've been using it ever since. I think we've sold 140 with my affiliate link, and I haven't had one person come to me and complain about it. So yeah, and for that price, I mean, I couldn't believe, most of the ones I looked at originally were $1,500, $2,000, but under $500. I will say it's heavy. Like, for moving, it's a heavy desk, but it works great.
That's great. That's great. Oh, I think the link I put in might have been the wrong link, but it's in the link that you have on Amazon. So don't use that thing I put in for the autonomous or whatever that was. That's the wrong link. But so great. Are there other questions? Do you use green screen and virtual backgrounds? I have a feeling you probably don't because of the way you're set up with slides already, and that would probably be disturbing.
Yeah, well, that, and I move a lot. I
Yeah.
move my hands, I move my body. What is not good with a green screen is someone that's moving a ton, right? Because you'll get a little bit of lag, you'll get a little of that pixelation. I've also noticed, like from a green screen, like the clothing you pick also kind of determines that, and the lighting, even lighting the green screen. And so that element I haven't. Now I will say I have a black screen that I use as kind of like a more intimate, casual conversation, but I don't use a virtual background on that at all. There is an event I'm doing in 2 weeks, actually less than 2 weeks, where we sold, as part of the sponsorship package, actual sponsored backgrounds. But what I did was I bought a step and repeat that we'll get here next week. So I'm gonna pull it up as a step and repeat banner behind me, rather than having it as I sold it as a virtual background and then realized I didn't want to use that for my presentation. So, but if you can set it up and get it lit really well. I mean, one of the people that I coach, Mitch, he's a lawyer out of California, and his virtual background and his delivery is amazing with his green screen. But he also has it professionally lit with I think the 5-point light system. It's, a high-tech green screen. So it's all one of those things where you're going to invest your time and your value for it. And background does matter. I don't think that's something you underestimate. What you're also telling with your background.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Somebody's asking about a teleprompter program.
So I don't use a teleprompter, but the iPad one hold on, I have the app installed. Let's see.
I have Parrot. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, Parrot. That's it. Yep, that's it.
Yep.
Is that, hold on, let's see.
But
Yep,
admittedly, I've barely used it. I only use it when I have to be completely on script with a short video. I might use the teleprompter, but that's it.
So my secret with that is, and it's a really expensive, fancy secret, sticky notes. So for all of my presentations, I stick my sticky note, my 5 touch points directly underneath of my web camera, as you guys can see right there, the second one. I put all 5 across the top, and that keeps me on track. It makes me feel like I can go down a path and still know where I'm going. And so I do that with every presentation that I give, where it's something either new or something that has to be directly on point. I use sticky notes directly under my camera. I do that with the video that you guys saw me shoot for the promo for this. There was 3 things I wanted to make sure that I hit. So I put a sticky note on literally on my web camera. I took my web camera like that. This is how fancy. And I put all 5 things I want to make sure I said, and I recorded the video just like that. So that's my way of doing it. I think some people are script, some people are teleprompter. For me, I want the freedom to go where I want, but I also know I have a tendency to go anywhere and everywhere, and I want to make sure that I am centered, which the sticky notes help.
That's fantastic. So we are coming close to the end, but there's a couple of other questions here. How do you handle meeting planners who have a program format for slides? It's very rigid and, I dare say, ugly. So obviously, yes, that is the piece, but can you convince them to use yours? Because maybe it's just because they don't know any different.
So what I've done multiple times is reached out to the platform before I reach out to back out to the event planner and ask the platform, hey, what are your capabilities? I did this recently with GoToWebinar, and the price point that the client was using didn't allow for this full-on video that I was using. I reached out via Twitter direct message to the WebEx and said, hey, I'm doing this presentation to this company. I want to use video. Any chance you could enable them to use it for my presentation? I have a feeling they might like it and be willing to upgrade. WebEx said yes. I went back to the planner and said, hey, I talked to WebEx. They're going to enable your plan, allow me to use video if that's okay. She loved that. Absolutely thought it was like the greatest thing ever. The other thing is sending them kind of hey, this is what I did on a similar platform without the constraints, right? I think that's one of the things. And the other piece is, you have to own what you own, right? Like if you're doing it live, we now control everything, which is scary. And if you're going to push back on an event planner, you have to be willing to say, hey, I'm going to control all of these things. For a lot of events, when they get on with me, they're like, okay, Brian, when do you want me to pull the poll question? When do you want me to switch your camera? And I'm like, no, I got all of that. Like, make sure that everyone pins my video and I will take care of the rest. And it's just because it's not expectation. I mean, like, let's face it, for 10 years, we've been mailing it in virtual present. I mean, I'm the same way. Like, I would sign up for 10 webinars, not planning on attending any of them. And when I would get paid for a webinar, I had a $3,500 webinar product, and it was the same presentation I gave every time, and it was voiceover slides, and I mailed it. You know, didn't mail it in, but I had a webinar delivery. And now, if we want to get over that, we have to teach the event people that we've trained the other way to say, hey, I can now do 2 cameras, overlays, custom graphics, and bring in the audience. But it takes us kind of training them on the possibilities.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. And so I see you having several screens up there. So you have the screen where you see what's happening,
yep,
our experience. But then you also have the other screen over there. Is there a reason for that, or is that just,
ADHD? I like that. That's true. It's part of it is because I have a tendency to look, for those that don't have the camera, if you have your web camera on top of your monitor like I do, if your video's way down or your video's on another side, we have a tendency to look there. And so for me, I like to have who I'm talking to here, and I like to have anything that's like support or monitoring on the other side. But it's also, I mean, it's the way I've worked for forever. So, I mean, I've had this 2 monitors set up like this for 10 years. So I think it's a little bit of habit as much as anything else.
And it also feels like you're in the command control.
I am. I know. And I even have my iPad up, which like the reason I have an iPad up is so for like the other thing with live is like you don't know that you're live or that it's working unless someone can tell you. And so when I don't have my team, sometimes I have my team on my live, and she'll actually have a Google Doc, and I'll put the Google Doc up here on this screen, and she'll write me notes in the Google Doc and be like, Brian, you have 2 questions in the chat, or Brian, make sure you come back to this, or Brian, slow down, or that happens a lot, or Brian, I can't hear your audio. And so I use the iPad on LTE. And so I'll actually go into like, I'll log in as a user so that I can see what I look like, so that I know, I don't have to wait halfway through the presentation. Someone be like, Brian, we can't see your second video. And it's like, so I use the iPad off of Wi-Fi so I don't kill my bandwidth, but I use that to monitor.
Yep. And so a question about how do you look in the camera. Somebody has a question about using the iPhone to, you do have to look exactly where the camera is, and you do as well when you're doing this. And for example, right now I'm looking at your picture on the screen, so I recognize that I'm not actually looking at the camera, which is right here, right? So I'm looking at you on the screen instead. Yep. How did you get used to actually staring at the camera instead of the people that are on the screen in front of you?
The sticky note. I put a sticky note covering up the video on my phone. I don't know where I just put my phone. Me without my phone is like the rarest thing in the world. I don't know where I put it. I must have moved it. But I actually put it over. So like if you have your device and like, the camera's here, I actually put it here with an arrow pointing that way. Like literally I make it to where I can't even see myself, right? And it takes a while to get in that habit, right? So like to look in that view, like that direct view. The other thing to remember too is depending on how far or how close you are determines how much that stands out, right? Like when I'm standing back further, the ability of me looking at the camera or not looking at the camera doesn't exist versus being very close. So for those that are worried about that, think about adding some depth between you and the camera. It kind of gives you a little bit more freedom to not feel like you have to look directly in the camera, because it's a little, now that I have my, my piece there, and I'm a big fan of, if that's definitely something, shrink the screen as much as possible and put it directly under the webcam.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Brian. This has been amazing. It's been an insight into your world, as well as insight into how we can move the needle for our presentations and really think out of the box, no pun intended, on being in the box on a virtual event.
Yep.
Do you have anything sort of like a parting note? Do you have something where, other than your links, where you want us to go get more? Plugging your book that's coming up sometime soon, saying that if anybody has not listened in on all your, iTunes, what do you call it, podcasts and stuff like that, I would just say go there. There's so much that's just a free. You're sharing so much of your wisdom and knowledge all the time.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So yeah, that's my thing. I've shared everything. Including the report. I launched a brand new YouTube channel that is only virtual stuff, like only virtual presentation, only virtual event. If you in your browser just put in the URL pressthedamnbutton.video, it'll redirect you to my new YouTube channel. I'm trying to create at least 2 videos a week up there, free, just for, hey, this is what I learned, this is what I'm trying. The one that goes live tomorrow is all about the value of a virtual event host. And then I have what I'm calling the Press the Damn Button experience that launches Friday. So it'll be a brand new podcast, brand new live show that's also gonna have a newsletter component to it as well. And all of that will be up on, I believe it'll be, I don't know if it's live yet, it might be live now. PressTheDamnButtonX.com. So let's see if it's x.com. Let's see if it redirects you to the landing page. It should.
I just added the redirect for the YouTube, but I had the link in there too, pressthedamnbutton.video.
Oh, yeah, Press the Damn Button's gonna be an interview show for me. I'm interviewing, on how people are putting themselves out there, the future on that side. And I think the last thing is I think as speakers, we get to help define what the future looks like. We get to help design what the new normal looks like. I know right now it's overwhelming to know what we're doing. Like my entire business, I have 3 daughters, child support, spousal support, and my world to support. And it was all upended in March 4th through the 10th there. And I'm still figuring out as I'm going, but I feel the more that we're willing to push back and try to push this to a level that we're creating an experience that you can't get anywhere else, it's going to only increase the value we provide offline. It's going to give us, more opportunities as, more things change in our world. And I think, I challenge everybody to kind of figure out what works best for you and, make a stand for that and, kind of put it out there. So I love that you guys let me come here. I've heard such amazing things about NSA New York chapter always being told as it's the best from everyone from Phil and a lot of them that have left, even that still talk about how great you guys are with Sylvie and Neen and Phil Jones and Jill and those guys. So I just thanks so much for having me be a part of it. And if I can answer any questions, I'm the same social media on every platform. I'm on literally every platform at iSocialFans with a Z at the end. So pick your favorite one. Don't follow me everywhere. It'll overwhelm most people, but pick your favorite platform. If you give me a follow there, ask me any questions you have, and happy to help.
Thank you so much. And can we all just unmute for a second and just give a big applaud and a yay, and thank you for our ending here. And as we're doing that, I also have a final slide to share after we applaud you. Everybody, yay!
Yay, Brian.
Yay, fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And I just want to share one final slide here, which is this has been our mastery class. This is the final mastery class. You see Brian down there. We also have, we're going to keep doing classes next year as well. But this year's class is the whole bundle, including the virtual summit.
Can you bring your camera and just take a picture of that, please? Yeah. Perfect.
Yep. And the whole thing is actually going to be available for you. All the videos, including the video today, will be available as a bundle to purchase, so that this will forever be a outstanding sort of program that we will continue to go back to in different ways. And going forward, next year, I'm going to just unmute myself again. And next year we will have programming again, similar to the mastery classes. I'm not sure yet exactly what we're going to put together, but we got a lot of feedback and brainstorm going on, and we will host some amazing events next year. And it will be part of your professional membership next year. It will not be a separate bundle package to purchase. So I encourage you to look out for what's coming in your inbox and getting on with the professional memberships when they're coming out to you, because we have a lot going on for next year as well. But in the meantime, if you missed the classes, if you were not part of our bundle this year, come join us for this past bundle here. It was an amazing fun time to host all of these virtual classes for everyone. And it's been a great year. And hopefully we will just setting ourselves up for more. And back to thanking you, Brian, for being our final class. Really appreciate you for
That's a heck
stepping
of a
up
lineup.
and
I'm impressed.
making
That's
this
awesome.
amazing. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.